Lysandra had learned to make herself small over the years, shoulders curved inward, head bowed, voice soft enough that it barely registered as sound. But no amount of smallness could hide what was happening to her body, and as she stood in the grand hall of the Moonstone Pack before the Council of Elders, she felt every eye burning into her swollen belly like accusations made flesh. Her mate wasn't here to protect her. King Orion Valthorn had left 3 weeks ago to handle border disputes in the Eastern Territories, believing his queen and unborn pup were safe at home. He'd kissed her forehead before departing, his hand resting gently on her barely showing belly, his amber eyes warm with promise. "Take care of our pup," he'd murmured. "I'll return before the moon turns full twice more." He had no idea what was about to happen. "Bring in healer Mira," Elder Cassia commanded, her voice cutting through the hall like a blade. The ancient she-wolf's silver hair fell past her waist, and her eyes held no warmth as they settled on Lysandra. "Examine her. Count the heartbeats. Confirm what we suspect." Lysandra's hands moved protectively to her stomach. "Confirm what?" Healer Mira approached with reluctant steps, placing weathered hands gently on Lysandra's swollen belly. The healer's magic spread through her abdomen like warm ripples in water, searching for the telltale rhythms of life within. The hall fell absolutely silent, waiting. Mira's eyes opened slowly, and in her gaze was profound sympathy mixed with apology. She looked at Lysandra first, not at the council. "How many?" Elder Cassia demanded. Mira's throat worked as she swallowed. 5. 5 distinct heartbeats, all strong. The hall erupted into chaos. Gasps echoed off stone walls. Someone actually screamed, as though Mira had announced Lysandra carried demons instead of pups. 5, Elder Cassia repeated with cold vindication. "An abomination, just as we suspected." "They're not an abomination," Lysandra protested, but her voice was drowned out by rising accusations. Her mind was still processing the number. 5 pups, 5 lives growing inside her, each one precious, each one hers and Orion's. "Silence!" Elder Cassia's command cut through the chaos. "Multiple births of that magnitude are a curse, a sign of sickness in the bloodline, of dark magic influencing the natural order." "That's not true," Lysandra said, panic sharpening her voice. "I haven't done anything wrong. These are King Orion's pups, legitimate heirs. How can they be cursed? Wolves bear one, occasionally 2 pups." Elder Marcus spoke up, his scarred face set in hard lines. 5 indicates something fundamentally wrong. Since King Orion has proven his strength repeatedly, the fault must lie with you. The twisted logic made heads nod in agreement around the hall. But fury began burning through Lysandra's shock, giving her unexpected strength. "That's superstition, not medicine," she said clearly. 5 healthy pups with strong heartbeats means my body is doing exactly what it should. 5 heirs instead of 1. How is that weakness? "Because it defies nature," Elder Cassia said coldly. "And what defies nature is cursed. The council has voted. You will be exiled immediately, before King Orion returns and allows sentiment to cloud his judgment. You voted before you even confirmed what I was carrying?" Lysandra's voice shook with rage now, not fear. "You decided my fate based on prejudice? We decided based on centuries of wisdom," Elder Cassia corrected. "You will be escorted to the border and released beyond our territory. If you attempt to return, you will be killed." "Then I want something in exchange," Lysandra heard herself say, the words coming from a fierce new place inside her, the place that would do anything to protect her unborn pups. "If you're exiling me based on superstition instead of evidence, I want a promise, witnessed and recorded." Elder Cassia's eyes narrowed. "You are in no position to make demands." "I'm in the only position that matters," Lysandra countered. "I'm the mother of 5 pups who might be perfectly healthy despite what you believe. So here's my demand. If I survive this exile, if these pups are born healthy, if no curse follows, then I want it recorded in the pack archives. And I want more than that." Her voice grew stronger. "If I return with 5 healthy pups, if I prove everything you believe is wrong, then you will acknowledge your mistake publicly and recognize my pups as legitimate heirs. You won't survive, Elder Cassia said flatly. No she-wolf carrying 5 pups has survived birth without pack healers. Maybe, Lysandra agreed. But if I'm going to die, then it costs you nothing to make this promise. And if I live, you'll face the consequences of what you're doing today. I will witness it. A new voice spoke up. Elder Corinth stepped forward, younger than the others, with intelligent eyes that actually saw Lysandra rather than looking past her. If Lysandra returns with 5 healthy pups, the council will formally acknowledge its error and recognize them as legitimate heirs. You have my word, sealed with pack magic. Elder Corinth raised her hand, and blue light began to glow around her fingers. Binding pack magic, visible proof of an oath that couldn't be broken without severe consequences. The light spread to encompass the entire council, touching each member as they nodded reluctant agreement, then reached out to settle warmly against Lysandra's belly. The oath is sealed, Elder Corinth said quietly. I'm sorry I can't do more. You've done enough, Lysandra said, and meant it. Guards moved forward, firm hands closing around her arms. They led her through side corridors, avoiding places where pack members might see their disgraced queen being removed. She caught glimpses of familiar faces, all looking away now, already pretending she didn't exist. Only one person stepped forward as they reached the outer gates. Well, well, a rough voice called out, dripping with sarcasm. The mighty council exiling a pregnant she-wolf for the crime of being too fertile. How very evolved of you. An older woman emerged from the shadows, wild gray hair escaping from a messy bun, weathered face set in absolute disdain. She wore healer's robes and moved with fearless confidence between Lysandra and the guards. Healer Marin? One guard said cautiously. The council has ordered— I know what they ordered, you muscle-bound fool, Marin interrupted, waving a dismissive hand. I was listening to them debate whether 5 pups meant cursed offspring or just good genetics. Spoiler alert, it's not a curse. It's called a healthy uterus, but apparently we're going with the burn the witch approach to prenatal care now. Despite everything, Lysandra felt hysterical laughter bubble up at the healer's absolute fearlessness. I'm not here to stop you from making a historically terrible decision, Marin continued. I'm here to make sure this girl doesn't die before she can prove you all wrong. She turned to Lysandra, genuine sympathy beneath the sarcasm. You'll need supplies and information. Within minutes, Marin had pressed a pack into Lysandra's hands. Herbs, food, water skins, and a folded map. Red pouch for pain, green for nausea, blue if the pups come early, Marin explained quickly. 3 days walk northeast. There's a settlement called Thornhaven, run by a healer named Wren. Tell her Marin sent you. Tell her you're carrying quintuplets. She's delivered more multiple births than anyone alive. If anyone can help you survive, it's her. Thank you, Lysandra whispered, the word inadequate for such a gift. Thank me by coming back here with 5 healthy pups and shoving them in the council's collective face, Marin said dryly. I've got money riding on whether Cassia's head actually explodes from rage when you prove her wrong. The guards pulled Lysandra forward to the border marked by ancient protective stones. They replaced her fine dress with traveling clothes, a final humiliation, then stepped back. You're not permitted to return, one guard said apologetically. King Orion will be informed when he arrives. I'm sorry, Luna, this isn't right. But you're still letting it happen, Lysandra said quietly. He nodded, unable to defend what they both knew was indefensible. Then they were gone, leaving Lysandra alone at the border with Marin's pack. 5 lives inside her, and 1 magically bound promise sealed in pack magic. She stood watching the sun descend, painting the sky orange and gold. Then she adjusted the pack on her shoulders, pulled out the map, and turned northeast toward Thornhaven. Toward a healer named Wren who might help her survive the impossible. Toward proving every person in that council chamber wrong. Behind her, King Orion Valthorn was still 3 days' ride away, believing his mate and unborn pup were safe. He had no idea that by the time he returned, his queen would be gone, his 5 heirs declared cursed, and the council would be preparing lies about why exile had been necessary. He had no idea that finding her would require crossing territories, defying his council, and reshaping their entire world. But that would come later. For now, there was only Lysandra walking into the darkening forest, one hand clutching Marin's map, the other pressed protectively over her belly where 5 tiny heartbeats answered with flutters of life. "I'll keep you safe," she whispered. "I promise. We're going to survive this. We're going to come back, and we're going to prove everyone wrong." The forest answered with wind through trees and distant bird calls, and Lysandra walked onward into exile, carrying 5 lives and 1 promise toward an uncertain future that started with finding Thornhaven and the healer who would help deliver 5 impossible pups. The forest at night was nothing like the manicured gardens Lysandra had walked through as queen. Here, every shadow held potential danger. Every rustle in the underbrush made her heart leap into her throat, and the darkness pressed against her skin like something alive and hungry. She'd been walking for 6 hours, following Marin's map by moonlight, when her body finally demanded she stop. Her feet ached, her back screamed in protest, and the 5 lives inside her seemed to be having some kind of midnight dance party that involved kicking every internal organ simultaneously. "I know you're uncomfortable," she whispered, settling against a large oak tree and pulling out the water skin. "I'm uncomfortable too, but we're going to make it to Thornhaven. We're going to survive this." One of the pups. She'd started thinking of them individually, even though she had no way to tell them apart yet, delivered a particularly emphatic kick directly to her ribs. "Yes, I know you disagree with my life choices," Lysandra said dryly. "Trust me, I'm questioning them too. But unless you've figured out how to navigate forest terrain from inside a womb, I'm the best option we've got right now." Another kick, this one feeling almost indignant. Despite everything, the exile, the terror, the bone-deep exhaustion, Lysandra found herself smiling. Her pups had personality already. They were fighters. They were going to need to be. She dozed fitfully against the tree, waking every time a branch cracked or an owl hooted. By the time dawn broke through the canopy in shafts of golden light, Lysandra felt like she'd been trampled by a herd of deer and then put back together by someone who'd lost the instruction manual. The second day was worse than the first. Her feet developed blisters that burst and reformed. Her back cramped so badly she had to stop every hour to rest. And the nausea that she'd thought was finally behind her came roaring back with a vengeance, forcing her to use Marin's green pouch twice before noon. But she kept walking, because stopping meant giving up. And giving up meant proving Elder Cassia right. By the 3rd afternoon, Lysandra was moving on pure stubbornness and the increasingly urgent kicks from her passengers, who seemed very interested in reminding her that they were depending on her survival instincts. "I'm doing my best," she muttered, consulting the map for the 100th time. According to Marin's markings, Thornhaven should be just beyond the next ridge. If this map is wrong and we end up walking in circles, I'm going to be very upset with that healer's sense of direction. She crested the ridge and stopped, blinking in disbelief. Thornhaven wasn't a village. It wasn't even really a settlement in any traditional sense. It was a chaotic collection of mismatched structures that looked like someone had thrown together every architectural style imaginable and then said, "Good enough," before moving on to more interesting projects. There were stone cottages next to wooden cabins, canvas tents beside what appeared to be a renovated barn. One structure seemed to be built entirely into a massive hollowed-out tree trunk, complete with windows carved through the bark. Smoke rose from at least a dozen chimneys, and the scent of cooking food made Lysandra's stomach growl with desperate hunger. But what caught her attention most was the woman standing at the settlement's entrance, arms crossed, looking like she'd been waiting specifically for Lysandra to arrive. She was ancient, possibly even older than Elder Cassia, though her energy was completely different. Where Cassia had been cold and condemning, this woman radiated the kind of no-nonsense practicality that suggested she'd seen everything at least twice and hadn't been impressed either time. Her hair was pure white, braided into a crown around her head, and her face was weathered like old leather left too long in the sun. "You must be Lysandra," the woman said without preamble. Marin sent word through a messenger bird yesterday that I should expect a pregnant she-wolf carrying an unprecedented number of passengers, and that I should prepare for medical history or spectacular disaster, possibly both. Are you Ren? Lysandra asked, suddenly aware of how terrible she must look after 3 days in the wilderness. Last time I checked, Ren confirmed. Her sharp eyes swept over Lysandra with professional assessment, cataloging details with the speed of someone who'd examined thousands of patients. 5 pups, Marin said. That true? Or is she exaggerating for dramatic effect again? 5, Lysandra confirmed. The pack healer counted 5 heartbeats. Huh. Ren tilted her head, considering this information with the casual interest of someone being told about unusual weather patterns. Haven't delivered quintuplets in about 40 years. Last time was for a she-wolf who'd mated with an alpha from a northern pack. Something about particularly fertile bloodlines combining. She survived. Pups were healthy. Course, she also didn't walk 3 days through the forest while pregnant, so you might want to work on your decision-making skills. Despite her exhaustion, Lysandra felt a laugh bubble up. Walking through the forest wasn't my first choice. Being exiled by my own pack for carrying cursed offspring wasn't exactly in my plans either. Cursed offspring, Ren repeated with spectacular disdain. Let me guess. Your pack elders are the type who think anything they haven't personally witnessed must be unnatural and therefore dangerous. That's extremely accurate, Lysandra said. Always is, Ren muttered. You'd think after living a couple centuries, wolves would get smarter. Instead, they just get more set in their stupid opinions. She stepped forward, gesturing for Lysandra to follow. Come on. You look like you're about 30 seconds from collapsing, and I'd rather you do that somewhere with cushions instead of on the ground where I'd have to drag you. Thornhaven up close was even more chaotic than from a distance. Small figures, human and shifter both, ran between buildings playing some kind of complicated game that involved a lot of shouting. A blacksmith's hammer rang out from one building while someone practiced scales on a badly tuned violin from another. 3 chickens wandered past like they owned the place, completely unbothered by the large dog sleeping in a patch of sunlight. What is this place? Lysandra asked, following Ren through the organized chaos. Thornhaven's a settlement for people who don't fit anywhere else, Ren explained, navigating around a group of teenagers engaged in what appeared to be a fierce debate about the proper way to tan leather. Exiles, outcasts, folks who left their packs for various reasons. We don't ask too many questions about people's pasts. We just care about whether they pull their weight and don't cause unnecessary drama. She led Lysandra to one of the stone cottages, this one well-maintained with herbs growing in window boxes and a cheerful blue door. Inside was surprisingly comfortable. A large main room with a fireplace, cushioned chairs, shelves lined with books and medicine bottles, and the examination table that looked suspiciously well used. Sit, Ren commanded, pointing at the examination table. Let me check you and those passengers before you tell me your whole tragic backstory. I prefer to know if someone's about to give birth before I hear about their relationship drama. Lysandra climbed onto the table with significantly less grace than she would have liked. Ren's hands were surprisingly gentle as they pressed against her swollen belly, magic flowing from her fingertips with practiced ease. The healer was quiet for a long moment, eyes closed in concentration. Then she opened them and fixed Lysandra with an expression that was equal parts impressed and exasperated. You've got 5 extremely healthy, extremely active pups in there, Ren announced. All good sizes, all in proper position, no signs of distress despite your recent wilderness adventure. You've also got about 3 months before they decide to make their appearance, give or take a few weeks depending on how impatient they get. 3 months. Lysandra repeated, the timeline suddenly very real. Give or take, Ren confirmed. Now, you want to tell me why your pack decided to exile a perfectly healthy pregnant queen? Because I'm guessing it's a stupid reason, but I like to know exactly what kind of stupid we're dealing with. So Lysandra told her everything. King Orion's departure, the council's examination, the accusation of carrying cursed offspring, Elder Corinth's witnessed promise, Marin's supplies and map. Ren listened without interrupting, her expression growing progressively more disgusted as the story unfolded. "Cursed offspring," Ren said again when Lysandra finished, like the words tasted bad. "Because you're carrying 5 healthy pups instead of 1. That's the dumbest thing I've heard this month. And last week someone tried to convince me that eating raw garlic would give them the ability to see the future." "Did it work?" Lysandra asked, slightly hysterical laughter threatening to escape. "Only if the future involves really bad breath and no friends," Ren said dryly. "No, your pups aren't cursed. Multiple births are rare, yes, but they happen in strong bloodlines, particularly when both parents carry specific genetic markers. You're King Orion. He's from the Valthorn line, right?" Lysandra nodded. "Valthorns have a history of multiple births 3 generations back," Ren said matter-of-factly. "It's in the records if anyone bothered to check, which apparently your council didn't. Combined with your own bloodline, 5 pups is unusual but not unnatural. Just means you won the genetic lottery. Congratulations. Your prize is a very uncomfortable pregnancy and several years of not sleeping." The casual way Ren dismissed centuries of superstition made something tight in Lysandra's chest finally loosen. "So I'm not carrying an abomination? You're carrying 5 pups who are going to be absolute terrors once they learn to walk, based on how active they are right now," Ren corrected. "But no, not an abomination. Just a handful. Possibly 5 handfuls. We'll figure out the exact handful measurement once they're born. When King Orion returns and finds out I'm gone," Lysandra started. "When your king returns, he's going to lose his mind," Ren interrupted. "And then he's going to come looking for you, because that's what mates do. The question is whether he finds you before or after those pups are born." She fixed Lysandra with a sharp look. "You want him to find you?" "Yes," Lysandra said without hesitation. "But not until after the pups are born. Not until I can prove to the council that they're healthy. That's the promise. If I return with 5 healthy pups, they have to acknowledge their mistake." "Us? So you need to survive the next 3 months, deliver quintuplets, recover enough to travel, and then march back into the territory that exiled you with 5 newborn pups and demand justice," Ren summarized. "You don't aim small, do you?" "Apparently not," Lysandra admitted. Ren studied her for a long moment, then nodded like she'd made a decision. "All right. You can stay here until the pups are born and you're strong enough to travel. I'll handle the delivery, which, fair warning, is not going to be pleasant with 5 passengers. In exchange, once you're recovered, you help around the settlement. We can always use extra hands, and teaching you some practical skills might keep you from dying of boredom while you're waiting to give birth." "Thank you," Lysandra said, and the words felt insufficient for what was being offered. Safety, medical care, a place to belong even temporarily. "Don't thank me yet," Ren said with a slight smile. "Wait until you've survived living in a settlement full of outcasts and misfits who have absolutely no sense of proper boundaries. Last month, someone decided we needed to debate the philosophical implications of cheese for 6 hours straight during dinner. It got intense. Despite everything, the exile, the fear, the uncertainty about the future, Lysandra laughed. Really laughed, for the first time in days. "I think I'm going to like it here," she said. "Give it a week," Ren said dryly. "Then we'll see if you still feel that way after someone tries to involve you in the great chicken naming debate of this year. It's been going on for 3 months. People have strong opinions." She helped Lysandra off the examination table and showed her to a small but comfortable room at the back of the cottage, a space with a real bed, clean blankets, and a window overlooking Thornhaven's chaotic collection of buildings. "Rest," Ren ordered. "Tomorrow you can meet everyone and start figuring out how to be useful. Tonight you sleep and let those pups settle down after their wilderness adventure." Lysandra climbed into the bed, her body sinking into the mattress with profound relief. Through the window she could see Thornhaven coming alive as evening fell. Lights appearing in windows, people gathering around fire pits, the sound of laughter and conversation drifting on the breeze. Somewhere beyond the forest, King Orion was riding home, expecting to find his queen waiting. Instead, he would find an empty castle and a council full of lies. But Lysandra would survive. She would deliver 5 healthy pups. and she would return to make good on that magically bound promise no matter what it took. The pups kicked in agreement, and Lysandra placed her hand over her belly, feeling the flutter of 5 impossible lives that refused to be called cursed. 3 months, she whispered to them. We just need to survive 3 months. Then we're going to show everyone exactly how wrong they were. Outside, someone started an argument about proper vegetable storage that escalated with impressive speed into a full-blown debate involving at least 8 people. Lysandra fell asleep smiling, surrounded by the chaotic noise of a settlement full of misfits who didn't exile pregnant she-wolves for the crime of being too fertile. For the first time since the council's judgment, she felt something that might actually be hope. King Orion Valthorn returned to the Moonstone Pack 3 days after Lysandra walked into exile, and the first thing he noticed was the silence. Not the peaceful quiet of a content pack, but the heavy, guilty silence of people who knew something terrible had happened and were desperately hoping no one would ask them about it. He dismounted in the castle courtyard, his travel-stained clothes and exhausted guards, testament to the grueling pace they'd maintained to return home early. The border disputes had been resolved faster than expected, a rare diplomatic success that had left Orion eager to return to his mate and their growing pup. "Where's the queen?" he asked the stable hand who took his horse's reins. The young man's face went pale. "Your Majesty, The council said they would what?" Orion's voice dropped into the dangerous register that made wolves instinctively bare their throats in submission. His alpha power rolled out in waves, demanding answers. "They exiled her," the stable hand whispered, looking like he wanted to disappear into the ground. 3 days ago. The council said, they said she was carrying cursed offspring and had to be removed before you returned. For 3 long seconds, Orion's mind simply refused to process the words. They made no sense strung together in that order. Lysandra? Exiled? His gentle mate who spent her evenings reading by the fireplace and laughing at his terrible jokes? Carrying cursed offspring when she was pregnant with his legitimate heir? Then the words clicked into place, and rage unlike anything Orion had ever experienced came roaring through his veins like molten fire. "Where?" he said with deadly calm. "Is the council?" 10 minutes later, Orion stood in the grand hall where 5 ancient wolves sat at their table looking significantly less confident than usual. Elder Cassia's expression was carefully neutral, but he could smell the fear underneath, sharp and acrid. "Explain," Orion said, his voice barely above a whisper. "Why my mate is not in this castle." "Your Majesty," Elder Cassia began with careful formality. "The council discovered that the queen was carrying an abomination." "Careful," Orion interrupted softly, "with your next words, because if you call my unborn heir an abomination again, this conversation is going to take a very different turn." Elder Marcus cleared his throat. "The queen was carrying 5 pups, Your Majesty. Quintuplets. Such multiple births are historically considered." 5? Orion's anger stuttered, replaced momentarily by shock. "Lysandra is carrying 5 pups?" "Was carrying," Elder Cassia corrected. "We don't know if she's still alive. Multiple births of that magnitude rarely survive without proper care, and she's been in the wilderness for 3 days now." Orion's fist slammed into the council table with enough force to crack the ancient wood straight down the middle. Every wolf in the hall flinched at the display of raw alpha fury. "You exiled my pregnant mate," Orion said, each word sharp as broken glass. "Because she was carrying 5 healthy heirs instead of 1? You sent her into the wilderness alone while I was away, unable to protect her or make decisions about my own family. The council has authority to act in the king's absence when the pack's safety is threatened," Elder Cassia said. But her voice had lost some of its certainty. "The pack's safety," Orion repeated with spectacular contempt. "My mate, a gentle she-wolf who wouldn't harm a fly, threatened this pack's safety by being too fertile. Multiple births are a sign of cursed bloodlines," Elder Marcus insisted. Historical records show that my great-grandmother was a triplet," Orion interrupted coldly. "My grandfather's sister gave birth to quadruplets. The Valthorn line has a documented history of multiple births. which anyone with basic access to the archives would know. Did any of you bother to check before you exiled my queen? The silence that followed was answer enough. Where did you send her? Orion demanded. We escorted her to the border and released her beyond pack territory, Elder Cassia said. Standard exile protocol? You stripped her of pack protection while pregnant with my heirs and left her to die in the wilderness, Orion said flatly. That's not protocol. That's murder with extra steps. Elder Corinth, who had been quiet until now, finally spoke up. Your Majesty, I should mention that Lysandra made the council give a magically bound promise before she left. If she returns with 5 healthy pups, we are obligated to acknowledge our error and recognize them as legitimate heirs. Something flickered in Orion's chest, pride mixed with heartbreak. Even facing exile, Lysandra had fought for their pups' future. She'd thought ahead, negotiated for justice, refused to simply accept condemnation. Show me the records, Orion commanded. Elder Corinth produced a scroll that glowed faintly with blue binding magic. Orion read it 3 times, memorizing every word of the promise his mate had extracted from the council that condemned her. You will honor this promise, he said quietly, because I'm going to find Lysandra, and she's going to survive, and those 5 pups are going to be born healthy. And when we return, this council is going to face consequences for what you've done. Your Majesty, Elder Cassia protested, you cannot simply leave the pack leader list to chase after— I can do exactly that. Orion cut her off. I'm the Alpha King. My first duty is to my mate and my heirs. The pack comes second. That's how it's always been, and that's how it will always be. He turned to leave, then paused at the doors, looking back at the council with eyes that held the cold fury of a winter storm. When I return, and I will return, I'm rebuilding the Queen's wing of the castle, he said. Not repairing it, rebuilding it entirely, tearing it down to the foundation and constructing something that reflects exactly how much I value my mate and our family, so that every wolf in this pack will see it and remember what happens when you touch what belongs to me. Your Majesty, the cost, Elder Marcus began. I don't care about the cost, Orion said flatly. I don't care if it takes 10 years and every resource this pack has. By the time I'm finished, this castle will have a queen's wing so magnificent that visiting alphas will talk about it for generations. And every stone will be a reminder that Lysandra is worth more than every council member combined. He left the council chamber with his fury barely contained, heading straight for the one person in the castle he trusted to tell him the truth without council-approved lies. He found Healer Marin in the herb gardens, apparently engaged in a heated argument with the roses about their blooming schedule. She looked up when he approached, completely unintimidated by the alpha rage rolling off him in visible waves. About time you got back, Marin said dryly. I was starting to think you'd decided to stay away permanently and avoid the mess your council made. Tell me everything, Orion commanded. Where is Lysandra? Is she alive? Where would she go? Marin studied him for a long moment, then apparently decided he deserved honesty. I sent her to Thornhaven. 3 days walk northeast, settlement of exiles and outcasts. Runs by a healer named Wren who's delivered more multiple births than anyone alive. If anyone can keep your mate and those 5 pups alive, it's her. Relief crashed through Orion so intensely his knees almost buckled. She made it there? Wren sent a messenger bird yesterday confirming Lysandra's arrival, Marin said. She's safe, tired, angry, terrified about the future, but safe. Those pups are healthy and active. Apparently they kick like they're training for combat. Orion felt something hot and painful behind his eyes, an emotion too big for words. His mate was alive. His 5 unborn heirs were healthy. They hadn't died in the wilderness like the council had assumed. I'm going to her, he said. Obviously, Marin agreed. But you might want to clean up first. You look like you've been rolling in dirt for 3 days, and showing up to reunite with your exiled pregnant mate while smelling like a swamp monster is bad form. I don't care how I smell— She'll care, Marin interrupted. Trust me, pregnant she-wolves have very strong opinions about smells. Give yourself 2 hours to bathe, pack supplies, and organize a small escort. Then go get your queen and bring her home. Orion wanted to argue, wanted to leave immediately, but Marin was right. Lysandra deserved better than a frantic, filthy alpha showing up and demanding she forgive him for not protecting her from his own counsel. "Thank you," he said quietly, "for helping her, for giving her a chance. I helped her because your counsel are idiots and she's carrying 5 medical miracles," Marin said bluntly. "But you're welcome. Now go bathe. You're making the roses wilt." 2 hours later, Orion rode out of the castle with 3 trusted guards, heading northeast toward Thornhaven and the mate he should have protected better. Behind him, the castle staff were already receiving orders about the Queen's Wing, architects to hire, materials to source, designs that would transform that section of the castle into something worthy of Lysandra. He would find her. He would bring her home. And he would spend the rest of his life making sure everyone knew exactly how much she meant to him. The pups, 5 impossible heirs who refused to be called cursed, would be born in a castle that declared their mother's worth with every rebuilt stone. And the council would learn that exiling an Alpha King's mate carried consequences they hadn't anticipated. Orion urged his horse faster, following Marin's directions toward Thornhaven and the reunion that would change everything. Behind him, the castle staff began sketching designs for a Queen's Wing that would become legend. Ahead of him, Lysandra was learning to navigate life in a settlement of misfits, growing 5 stubborn pups who already had strong opinions about everything. And between them, 3 days' hard ride and a future they would build together. One where quintuplets weren't cursed, but celebrated. One where an Alpha King rebuilt a palace to honor the she-wolf who'd survived exile to prove everyone wrong. Lysandra had been in Thornhaven for 5 days when the settlement descended into what Wren cheerfully called organized chaos over the chicken naming situation. "It's not that complicated," a burly man named Marcus argued, gesturing emphatically at 3 identical brown hens pecking at grain near the communal kitchen. "We name them after famous historical figures. Gives them dignity. Chickens don't need dignity. They need functional names," countered a thin woman named Petra. "Breakfast, lunch, and dinner. Simple, accurate. Describes their ultimate purpose. That's morbid," someone else shouted from across the courtyard. "That's practical." Lysandra watched the debate escalate from her seat outside Wren's cottage, one hand resting on her belly where the 5 pups were engaged in what felt like their own version of the chicken debate. Lots of kicking and apparently very strong opinions. "This happens once a month," Wren said, settling into the chair beside Lysandra with 2 cups of tea. "Someone suggests naming the chickens. Everyone has thoughts, nothing gets decided, and the chickens continue being called Hey You and the brown one. It's tradition at this point." "The brown one is all of them," Lysandra pointed out. "Exactly." Wren sipped her tea with the satisfaction of someone watching expected chaos unfold. "You're settling in well, considering you arrived looking like death warmed over." Lysandra had to admit Thornhaven was growing on her. The settlement operated on a beautiful principle of organized disorder. Everyone had jobs, but no one took them too seriously. The blacksmith made horseshoes while singing off-key. The baker taught combat skills in the afternoons. A former pack enforcer grew the most spectacular vegetables and got genuinely emotional when his tomatoes won the weekly produce competition. It was bizarre and chaotic, and nothing like the rigid structure of the Moonstone pack, and Lysandra found herself surprisingly comfortable with the madness. "Movement on the ridge," someone called out suddenly, and the chicken debate died instantly as every person in the settlement turned to look at the forest entrance. 4 riders emerged from the tree line, moving with the coordinated grace of trained guards. But it was the lead rider who made Lysandra's breath catch in her throat and her heart attempt to escape through her ribcage. Orion. Even from a distance, she recognized the way he sat his horse. Straight-backed and commanding, golden hair catching sunlight like a banner. He wore travel clothes instead of formal attire, but somehow managed to look more regal than half the nobility she'd seen in full ceremonial dress. And he was looking directly at her. "Well?" Wren said mildly. "That's either your mate or someone who's very confused about where he's going. Based on the way he's staring at you like you personally invented breathing, I'm guessing mate." Lysandra tried to stand, got approximately halfway up before her center of gravity betrayed her, and would have toppled sideways if Ren hadn't caught her elbow. Maybe stay seated for the dramatic reunion, Ren suggested. Less chance of face-planting in front of royalty? Orion dismounted before his horse fully stopped, hitting the ground with predatory grace and crossing the courtyard in long strides that ate up distance. His guards hung back, but Lysandra barely noticed them. Her entire attention was focused on her mate's face, the sharp relief in his amber eyes, the barely controlled emotion tightening his jaw, the way his hands clenched and unclenched like he was physically restraining himself from something. "Lysandra," he said, and her name in his voice after 5 days of exile sounded like a prayer and an apology and a promise all tangled together. "You came," she whispered, which was possibly the most obvious statement in the history of obvious statements, but her brain had apparently abandoned higher functions in favor of just staring at him. "Of course I came," Orion said, closing the distance between them and dropping to his knees beside her chair so they were eye level. His hands hovered near her face, then her shoulders, then her belly, like he couldn't decide where to touch first or if he was even allowed to touch at all. "Lysandra, I'm so sorry. I should have been there. I should have protected you from the council. I should have—" "You were handling border disputes," Lysandra interrupted gently. "You didn't know." "I should have known," Orion insisted, and now his hands settled carefully on her swollen belly, his expression transforming into something between awe and anguish. "5 pups. Marin told me you're carrying 5 pups, and the council called them cursed, and I wasn't there to stop them from exiling you. To be fair," Ren interjected from her chair, "5 pups is medically impressive but not cursed. The council are just idiots with impressive credentials." Orion's mouth twitched despite the obvious emotion in his eyes. "You must be Ren. Marin spoke highly of your abilities. Marin speaks highly of anyone who isn't a complete fool, which makes me stand out in her social circle," Ren said dryly. "Your mate and your 5 passengers are healthy, uncomfortable, exhausted, and developing very strong opinions about everything, but healthy." As if to prove Ren's point, one of the pups delivered a solid kick directly where Orion's hand rested. His eyes went wide with shock and wonder. "They're active," he said, sounding slightly strangled. "They're training for some kind of internal fighting championship," Lysandra corrected. "I'm fairly certain they're organizing teams and developing strategies in there." Another kick, this one from a different location. Then another. It was like the pups had sensed their father's presence and decided to make their opinions known about his 3-week absence and the general unfairness of being exiled before birth. Orion's laugh was shaky and overwhelmed. "They're strong. They're your heirs," Lysandra said softly. Of course they're strong. The settlement had gone conspicuously quiet, not because people weren't watching, but because they were watching with shameless interest while pretending to be busy with other things. Marcus was examining a chicken with intense focus. Petra was suddenly very interested in the quality of dirt near the well. At least 6 people were standing motionless, holding random objects like they'd forgotten what they were doing mid-task. "I'm rebuilding the Queen's wing," Orion said suddenly, his eyes locked on Lysandra's face. "Tearing it down completely and reconstructing it as something worthy of you, something that declares to everyone in the pack exactly how much you matter." Lysandra blinked. "The entire wing?" "The entire wing," Orion confirmed. "I've already sent word to architects. By the time you come home, it'll be the most magnificent structure in all the territories. Every alpha who visits will see it and know that my mate is worth more than all their accumulated wealth." "That's extremely dramatic," Lysandra said, but warmth was flooding through her chest, washing away some of the hurt and fear she'd carried since exile. "I'm a dramatic person when people threaten my family," Orion said unapologetically. "I also cracked the council table in half and told Elder Cassia that if she called our pups an abomination again, the conversation would take a different turn." "What kind of different turn?" Lysandra asked, slightly concerned. "The kind involving significantly more shouting and possibly some furniture destruction," Orion admitted. "I was very angry. I'm still very angry, but right now I'm more focused on the fact that you're alive and safe and—" His voice cracked slightly. "And I thought I might have lost you." Lysandra reached out to cup his face, thumb brushing across his cheekbone. "I'm here. We're here. All 6 of us. All 6 of you," Orion repeated, and the way he said it made it sound like a sacred vow. His hands pressed gently against her belly again, feeling the movement of the 5 lives they'd created together. "Come home with me. Please. Let me take you somewhere safe where you'll have healers and protection and—" "No," Lysandra said quietly but firmly, and watched surprise flicker across his face. "Not yet. Lysandra? I made the council a promise," she interrupted. "If I return with 5 healthy pups, they acknowledge their mistake and recognize our heirs as legitimate. That was the deal. If I come home now, before the pups are born, the council can claim I broke the terms. They can say the agreement was only valid if I survived the full exile and delivered the pups without pack help." Orion looked like he wanted to argue, but she could see him processing the logic, the careful, trapped logic of someone who'd been exiled and needed to be smarter than the people who'd condemned her. "I hate that you're right," he said finally. "I hate it too," Lysandra admitted, "but I need to stay here until the pups are born. Ren can deliver them safely. And then, when we come home with 5 healthy heirs, the council will have no choice but to honor their promise." "I'm not leaving you again," Orion said with absolute finality. "If you're staying here until the birth, then I'm staying here too." "You're the Alpha King," Lysandra protested. "You can't just abandon the pack." "Watch me," Orion said flatly. "I've left my second-in-command in charge with very clear instructions. I'm not leaving your side until those pups are born and you're strong enough to come home." From her chair, Ren made a thoughtful sound. "We'll need to expand the cottage. Also, fair warning, Your Majesty, Thornhaven operates on a system of shared duties. Everyone contributes. Even Alpha Kings." "What needs doing?" Orion asked without hesitation. "Currently, someone needs to settle the chicken naming debate before it escalates into actual violence," Ren said seriously. "Think you can handle that?" Lysandra watched her powerful Alpha King mate, ruler of the Moonstone Pack, feared by enemies, respected by allies, turn to survey the crowd of misfits still arguing about poultry nomenclature. "I decree," Orion announced with royal authority, "that the chickens shall be named Courage, Honor, and Dignity, because they've survived this settlement's chaos with remarkable fortitude." Dead silence. Then Marcus burst out laughing. "The Alpha King just named our chickens after abstract virtues," he wheezed. "That's the best thing that's happened all week." "All in favor?" Ren called out. A chorus of ayes echoed across the settlement, and just like that, the chicken debate was resolved by royal decree. Orion turned back to Lysandra, looking slightly bewildered by what had just happened. "Did I just solve that?" "You did," Lysandra confirmed, laughing despite everything. "Welcome to Thornhaven, where chaos is tradition and chickens require royal intervention." He settled beside her chair, hand finding hers and squeezing gently. "I'm not leaving you again. Whatever happens, wherever you need to be, I'm staying. Even if it means living in a settlement where people debate vegetable quality with religious fervor?" Lysandra asked. "Even then," Orion promised. And for the first time since exile, surrounded by misfits and chickens with abstract virtue names and a mate who'd crossed territories to find her, Lysandra felt something close to peace. They had 3 months until the pups arrived. 3 months to prepare, to heal, to be together, and then they would go home and prove everyone wrong. Orion discovered that living in Thornhaven required an entirely different skill set than ruling the Moonstone Pack, and most of those skills involved humility, patience, and an unexpected amount of vegetable-related knowledge. No, you're holding the hoe wrong," Petra informed him on his second day, looking at the Alpha King like he was a particularly slow student. "You'll throw out your back that way. Here, angle it like this. Use your legs, not your shoulders." Orion adjusted his grip, acutely aware that 3 former pack enforcers were watching his gardening technique with barely suppressed amusement. "Like this? Better," Petra said grudgingly. "You might not kill the carrots now." "Might." From her seat in the shade, because Wren had firmly forbidden any activity more strenuous than sitting and growing pups, Lysandra tried very hard not to laugh at her mate's expression. Orion caught her eye and pulled a face that was equal parts exasperation and self-deprecating humor. "Your mate is terrible at gardening," Petra announced loudly enough for half the settlement to hear. "But he follows instructions, which is more than I can say for Marcus." "I heard that!" Marcus shouted from across the courtyard, where he was attempting to repair a chicken coop that courage, honor, and dignity had somehow managed to partially destroy overnight. "You were meant to," Petra shouted back. Thornhaven had accepted Orion's presence with the casual efficiency of people who'd seen enough oddity to not be bothered by an alpha king living among exiles. He was assigned duties like everyone else, gardening, woodcutting, helping with repairs, and expected to pull his weight without complaint. The first time someone had handed him an axe and pointed at a pile of logs, Orion had stared for 3 full seconds before Wren had helpfully commented, "Wood doesn't split itself, Your Majesty. Chop or freeze come winter. Your choice." He'd chopped wood for 4 hours, rediscovered muscles he'd forgotten existed, and earned grudging respect from the settlement's former laborers who appreciated that he didn't demand special treatment. Now, a week into his stay, Orion was developing calluses, learning which vegetables required specific soil conditions, and discovering that Lysandra found his incompetence at domestic tasks extremely entertaining. "You're enjoying this," he said that evening, settling beside her outside their expanded cottage. Wren had somehow orchestrated an addition being built in approximately 3 days through a combination of skilled labor and shameless manipulation of people's schedules. "I'm enjoying watching the mighty Alpha King learn about carrot angles," Lysandra admitted, her smile soft and genuine. "You've been very patient with everyone here. They're taking care of you and our pups," Orion said simply. "I'd learn to juggle chickens if that's what they required." "Please don't give them ideas," Lysandra said quickly. "Someone will take that as a challenge, and we'll end up with an actual chicken juggling competition." She wasn't wrong. Yesterday, someone had organized an impromptu contest to see who could stack the most firewood while standing on one leg. It had ended with a collapsed woodpile, 2 minor injuries, and Marcus declaring himself the undisputed champion of ridiculous balance challenges. Orion's hand settled on Lysandra's belly, a gesture that had become habitual over the past week. The pups recognized his touch now. They always responded with increased movement when his palm pressed against her skin, like they were greeting their father through layers of flesh and will. "They're getting bigger," he said, wonder still evident in his voice despite feeling them move dozens of times a day. "They're getting heavier," Lysandra corrected. "I'm fairly certain they're conspiring to see how uncomfortable they can make me before birth. Yesterday one of them kicked my kidney with what felt like personal vendetta." "Which one?" "How should I know which one?" Lysandra laughed. "They don't exactly announce themselves, though I'm starting to suspect there's a ringleader. One of them is definitely more active than the others. Always kicking first, like they're leading the charge." Orion's expression went soft with an emotion that made Lysandra's heart ache. "Our pups have a ringleader before they're even born. Your heir is already asserting dominance over their siblings," Lysandra said. "Very efficient." They sat in comfortable silence for a moment, watching Thornhaven settle into evening routines. Smoke rose from cooking fires. Someone practiced a flute with more enthusiasm than skill. The chickens, courage, honor, and dignity, had been herded back into their repaired coop and were making sleepy clucking sounds that suggested they were plotting tomorrow's escape attempt. "I received a message from the pack today," Orion said quietly, and Lysandra felt tension immediately coil in her shoulders. "Elder Corinth sent word through a trusted messenger. The council is getting nervous about my extended absence. They want you to come back," Lysandra said. It wasn't a question. "They want me to come back and resume my duties and stop indulging in sentiment," Orion quoted with barely concealed contempt. "Elder Cassia suggested that my mate would be fine with appropriate guards stationed nearby, and my presence at the castle was needed for pack stability. What did you tell them?" "I told them pack stability could wait until my 5 heirs were born," Orion said flatly, "and that if they had a problem with their Alpha King prioritizing his family, They were welcome to bring their complaints in person so I could address them face to face. Lysandra could imagine exactly what kind of addressing Orion had in mind. The kind that involved a lot of alpha dominance and council members remembering exactly who ruled the Moonstone Pack. "The Queen's wing construction has started," Orion continued, his voice warming with satisfaction. Elder Corinth included drawings with her message. "They've torn down the old structure completely. The new foundation is 3 times larger than before. It's going to be magnificent, Lysandra. Every stone placed with the intention of honoring you." "You're spending a fortune," Lysandra said, though warmth bloomed in her chest at the thought of Orion's grand gesture. "I'm spending pack resources on declaring my mate's worth," Orion corrected. "There's a difference. Every alpha who visits in the future will see that wing and understand that the Moonstone Pack values its queen beyond measure. They'll see it and know that anyone who threatens you faces consequences they can't imagine." He paused, then added with dark satisfaction, "Elder Cassia hates it. Apparently she's been quite vocal about the unnecessary expenditure, which means I'm doing exactly the right thing." Lysandra laughed despite herself. "You're enjoying her discomfort." "Enormously," Orion admitted without shame. "She exiled my pregnant mate and called our heirs cursed. Her discomfort is the least of what she's earned." One of the pups, possibly the ringleader, delivered an emphatic kick that made Lysandra wince. Orion's hand moved immediately, adjusting position to provide counter-pressure against the uncomfortable movement. "Easy," he murmured, and Lysandra couldn't tell if he was talking to her or the pups. Possibly both. "Your mother needs to rest, not serve as your personal training ground." Another kick, this one feeling almost indignant at the suggestion they should calm down. "They have your stubborn streak," Lysandra informed Orion. "They have your courage," Orion countered. "You negotiated with the council while facing exile. You walked 3 days through wilderness pregnant with quintuplets. You're surviving in an outcast settlement and planning to march back into pack territory with 5 newborn pups to demand justice. That's not stubbornness, love. That's extraordinary bravery." The endearment, "love," slipped out naturally, and Lysandra felt tears prick her eyes. Pregnancy had made her emotions volatile, capable of swinging from laughter to crying in approximately 3 seconds. "I'm not brave," she protested. "I'm terrified most of the time. I just don't have the luxury of giving up." "That's what bravery is," Orion said gently. "Being terrified and doing what needs to be done anyway." He leaned forward to kiss her forehead, a gesture of tenderness that somehow felt more intimate than anything passionate. His hand remained on her belly, feeling the constant movement of their 5 impossible heirs who refused to be called cursed. 2 more months, Lysandra said quietly. "Then we find out if all this preparation was enough." "It will be enough," Orion said with absolute certainty. "Because you're strong enough to do this, and Ren is skilled enough to help, and our pups are stubborn enough to survive anything. And when it's done, we're going home together. All 7 of us. All 7 of us," Lysandra repeated, testing the phrase. 1 mate, 5 pups, and her. A family that had been condemned before it existed, now preparing to prove the entire council wrong. From inside the cottage, Ren's voice called out, "Lysandra, if you're still sitting outside, you need to come in and elevate your feet. They're probably swelling, and I'm not dealing with you complaining about it tomorrow." "She has exceptional hearing," Lysandra muttered. "I also have exceptional impatience with pregnant she-wolves who ignore medical advice," Ren shouted. Orion helped Lysandra stand, a process that had become increasingly complicated as her belly grew larger, and guided her inside where Ren had already prepared a comfortable nest of cushions and pillows. 2 more months, Orion repeated as he settled beside her, hand finding hers in the dimming light. "Then we go home. Then we start building our future. One where our pups are celebrated, not condemned. One where the Queen's wing declares exactly how much they're worth," Lysandra added. "Exactly," Orion said, and his smile held promises of justice, vindication, and a future they would build together, despite everyone who'd tried to destroy it. Outside, Thornhaven descended into its nightly chaos of debates, laughter, and the occasional chicken-related crisis. Inside, an alpha king and his exiled mate held each other close, feeling 5 stubborn lives move between them, and planned for the day they would prove that love was stronger than superstition, and family was worth any cost. Even if that cost involved learning proper carrot-hoeing technique. 2 weeks before Lysandra's projected delivery date, Wren announced that it was time for practical preparation, which turned out to be code for controlled chaos disguised as education. Birthing quintuplets isn't like delivering a single pup, Wren explained, setting out an alarming array of medical supplies in the cottage's main room. It's more like orchestrating 5 separate performances where all the performers arrive at slightly different times and have opinions about the scheduling. That's a terrifying metaphor, Lysandra said from her position propped up on approximately 17 pillows. The only way she could sit comfortably anymore with 5 pups treating her internal organs like furniture to be rearranged at will. It's an accurate metaphor, Wren corrected. Now, here's what's going to happen. First pup will likely arrive without much drama. They're the trailblazer, clearing the path. Second through fourth will follow relatively quickly, maybe 10 to 30 minutes apart. The 5th one tends to be stubborn, taking their time like they're reconsidering the whole being born concept. Orion, who'd been listening with increasing concern, spoke up. Is there anything I can do to help? Yes, Wren said immediately. Don't panic, don't faint, and don't offer unhelpful commentary about how Lysandra's doing. She'll be doing exactly as well as someone pushing 5 pups into the world can be doing, which is surviving with determination and probably some creative cursing. I don't curse, Lysandra protested weakly. You will, Wren said with absolute confidence. Everyone curses during birth. It's traditional. Last multiple birth I attended, the mother invented 16 new curse words. I was impressed. From the doorway, Marcus called out, Are we still doing the betting pool about birth order predictions? Marcus, I swear to every spirit in this forest, Wren started. I've got 5 silver pieces on the ringleader coming out first, Marcus continued, completely ignoring Wren's warning tone. Asserting dominance from birth. I've got 3 silver on the smallest one coming last, Petra added, materializing beside Marcus. Classic youngest sibling energy. There's a betting pool about my pup's birth order? Lysandra asked, torn between amusement and horror. There's a betting pool about everything in Thornhaven, Wren said with resignation. Last month they bet on whether the morning rain would stop before or after noon. It created a surprisingly intense debate about meteorological interpretation. I won that bet, Marcus said proudly. You guessed, Petra corrected. Strategic guessing based on years of observation. That's still just guessing. Can we focus on the actual birthing preparation instead of gambling and weather debates? Wren interrupted with the patience of someone who'd had this exact conversation multiple times before. The preparation continued with Wren explaining breathing techniques, optimal positions for delivery, and what warning signs to watch for. Orion absorbed every word with the intense focus of someone studying for the most important test of his life, occasionally asking clarification questions that made Wren nod approvingly. You're a better student than half the healers I've trained, Wren told him. Most partners just nod along while internally panicking. You're actually learning. My mate is about to deliver 5 pups simultaneously, Orion said seriously. I'm learning everything possible so I can actually be useful instead of decorative. I like you decorative, Lysandra interjected, earning a startled laugh from several people who'd gathered near the cottage to eavesdrop on the lesson. Privacy is not a strong concept here, is it? Orion observed. Privacy is for people with boring lives, Marcus called out. We're invested in this quintuplet situation. It's the most interesting thing that's happened since Petra's goat ate someone's laundry, and we had to hold a tribunal about livestock supervision. That goat was a menace, Petra said defensively. That goat was hilarious, someone else corrected. The debate about the goat's character was interrupted by Lysandra gasping sharply, her hand flying to her belly. Orion was beside her instantly, every muscle tensed for action. What's wrong? He demanded. Nothing's wrong, Lysandra managed, breathing through the tight cramping sensation. Just practice contractions. Ren said they'd get stronger as we got closer to the actual birth. Braxton Hicks contractions, Ren confirmed, checking Lysandra with practiced efficiency. Your body's rehearsing for the main event. Perfectly normal, if uncomfortable. Uncomfortable is a diplomatic way to describe it, Lysandra muttered. It feels like the pups are having a disagreement about interior decorating and using my muscles to make their points. The cramping eased after a few minutes, leaving Lysandra exhausted, and Orion looking slightly traumatized. That was practice? He asked. That was practice, Ren confirmed. The actual labor will be significantly more intense, which is why we're preparing now instead of panicking later. Over the next few days, the practice contractions became more frequent, each one leaving Lysandra more tired and the pups more agitated. She couldn't sleep comfortably anymore. Every position resulted in someone kicking somewhere uncomfortable. Food made her nauseous. Walking more than 20 steps required rest breaks. I'm enormous, she complained to Orion on the 5th night, staring down at her belly with a mixture of awe and exhaustion. How did I get this enormous? I'm carrying 5 normal-sized pups, not 5 full-grown wolves. You're beautiful, Orion said automatically. I'm the size of a small cottage, and my feet haven't seen sunlight in weeks because I can't see past my own stomach, Lysandra corrected. You don't have to lie to make me feel better. I'm not lying, Orion insisted, pulling her against his side carefully, the only way they could embrace any more without 5 pups protesting the confined space. You're carrying our heirs. You're stronger than anyone I've ever known. And yes, you're beautiful, even when you're complaining about your feet. My feet are swollen, Lysandra said, but she was smiling despite herself. Your feet are working very hard to support a significant amount of weight, Orion corrected diplomatically. They're doing an excellent job under difficult circumstances. From the other room, Ren's voice called out, If you two are finished being disgustingly sweet to each other, Lysandra needs to drink more water and elevate those hard-working feet before they stage a rebellion. She really does have exceptional hearing, Orion muttered. I also have exceptional impatience with pregnant she-wolves who don't follow medical advice, Ren shouted. That night, Lysandra dreamed she was back in the Moonstone Pack Castle, standing before the council with 5 tiny wolf pups in her arms, each one perfect and healthy and undeniably alive. Elder Cassia's face transformed from smugness to shock as Lysandra placed each pup carefully on the council table, one by one, proof of everything the elders had been wrong about. She woke to pale dawn light filtering through the window and a strange tightness in her lower back that felt different from the practice contractions, deeper, more purposeful. Beside her, Orion was already awake, watching her with concern. You feel it too? Feel what? Your scent changed, Orion said quietly. About an hour ago, something shifted. Before Lysandra could respond, another contraction hit, stronger than the practice ones, with intent behind it. Her body was making a decision, preparing for something inevitable. Ren? She called out, trying to keep her voice calm. I think we might need you. The healer appeared in the doorway within seconds, already dressed and alert like she'd been expecting this. She took one look at Lysandra's face and nodded. Labor's starting, Ren announced. Earlier than predicted, but not dangerously early. Those pups have decided they're ready to make their appearance. She began organizing supplies with brisk efficiency. Orion, I need you to get water boiling. Marcus, stop eavesdropping and get the extra blankets from the storage house. Petra, we'll need that birthing tea I prepared last week. It's really happening? Lysandra asked. And despite months of preparation, the reality of it hit her with overwhelming force. They're really coming now? They're really coming now, Ren confirmed. So let's get you through this. Prove that council spectacularly wrong, and welcome 5 healthy pups into the world. Orion squeezed Lysandra's hand, his amber eyes blazing with fierce determination and love. We're ready, he said. All 7 of us. Another contraction rolled through, stronger than before, and Lysandra breathed through it with Ren's coaching and Orion's steady presence anchoring her. The pups were coming. After months of exile, preparation, and waiting, the moment that would change everything was finally here. Labor, Lysandra discovered over the next 6 hours, was less like the controlled medical event Wren had described, and more like being caught in a storm that her own body was generating without consulting her about the timing or intensity. "This is terrible," she gasped during a contraction that felt like someone was trying to reorganize her entire skeletal structure from the inside. "Why doesn't anyone warn you how terrible this is?" "Everyone warns you," Wren said calmly, checking Lysandra's progress with practiced hands. "You just don't really understand until you're experiencing it personally. First pup is almost ready. You're doing beautifully." "I'm doing terribly," Lysandra corrected through gritted teeth. "I'm sweating, I can't breathe properly, and I'm fairly certain I've cursed at least 3 people in the last hour." "Only 3?" Orion said from his position beside her, carefully supporting her back while she leaned forward through another contraction. "I counted 5. "Then you deserved all of them," Lysandra informed him. "Probably," Orion agreed easily. He'd been unshakable for the past 6 hours, following Wren's instructions with calm precision even when Lysandra had squeezed his hand hard enough to leave bruises and informed him that this was entirely his fault for having such ambitious genetics. "Next contraction, you push," Wren commanded. "First pup wants out. Let's help them along." The next contraction built like a wave, and Lysandra pushed with every ounce of strength she possessed, feeling something shift and move and finally give way. A tiny, wet cry split the air, and Lysandra's heart stopped and restarted in the space between one breath and the next. "First pup, healthy and loud," Wren announced, working quickly to clear the tiny nose and mouth. "Female. Strong lungs, good color, already complaining about the temperature change. She's perfect." Wren placed the pup, so impossibly small and wrinkled and beautiful, on Lysandra's chest for 3 precious seconds before moving her to the warming blankets Marcus had prepared. "1 down, 4 to go," Wren said. "Catch your breath. Next one will be along shortly." Shortly turned out to be 12 minutes, during which Lysandra experienced contractions that somehow felt both more and less intense than before. The second pup, another female, arrived with significantly less drama than her sister, barely crying before settling into the blankets with an expression that looked remarkably peaceful for someone who'd just been born. "The calm one," Wren observed. "Every litter has one. She's going to be easy." The third pup arrived 19 minutes later, this one male and clearly furious about the entire birthing process. His cries were loud enough that people outside the cottage could probably hear him expressing his opinions about existence. "He's got spirit," Marcus commented from the doorway where he'd stationed himself to receive updates for the gathered crowd outside. "He's got volume," Wren corrected. "Third pup, male, healthy, and extremely vocal." Moving on. Lysandra was beginning to understand what Wren meant about each birth being a separate performance. The fourth pup, another male, took his time, arriving after 34 minutes and what felt like Lysandra's entire remaining energy reserves. He was slightly smaller than his siblings, but perfectly formed, and his first action after being cleaned was to sneeze 3 times in rapid succession. "4 down," Wren said, and there was satisfaction in her voice. "Last one. Almost done, Lysandra." But the 5th pup had apparently decided that being born was optional. An hour passed with contractions that produced nothing. Then another hour. Lysandra was exhausted beyond anything she'd experienced, her body shaking with effort, her mind fuzzy with pain and determination. "What's wrong?" Orion asked Wren quietly, but Lysandra heard the fear underneath his controlled tone. "Nothing's wrong," Wren said, though her expression was more serious than before. "5th pup is just being stubborn. Needs some encouragement." She pressed carefully on Lysandra's belly, manipulating position with expert precision. "There." Shifted slightly. Next contraction should do it. The next contraction felt like it was trying to turn Lysandra inside out. But she pushed anyway, drawing on reserves she didn't know she possessed, fueled by sheer determination and the knowledge that 4 tiny pups were already cleaned and bundled and waiting for their sibling. And finally, the 5th pup arrived with a rush of fluid and relief so intense Lysandra sobbed. "5th pup, male," Wren announced, but her voice was different now, tight with concern instead of satisfaction. "He's not breathing. Orion, hold Lysandra. Now." Everything happened very quickly after that. Ren worked over the tiny still form with movements too fast for Lysandra to track through her exhaustion and panic. She was vaguely aware of Orion's arms around her, holding her up because her body had apparently decided it was finished with consciousness. Outside, the settlement had gone absolutely silent. Even the chickens seemed to be holding their breath. "Come on," Ren muttered, rubbing the pup's tiny chest with firm circular motions. "Come on, stubborn one. You didn't survive 5 months in the womb and a dramatic birth just to give up now." A small, hiccuping cry interrupted her, weak but unmistakably alive. "There you are," Ren breathed, and the relief in her voice made Lysandra start crying in earnest. "Took your time, didn't you? 5th pup, male, healthy but dramatic about making an entrance. He's perfect. They're all perfect." She brought the 5th pup to Lysandra, placing him carefully with his siblings in the nest of blankets. 5 tiny wolf pups, wrinkled and perfect and undeniably healthy, making small sounds of complaint and confusion about their sudden transition from warm womb to cold world. 5, Lysandra whispered, staring at them through tears. "All 5. They're all here. All 5, all healthy," Ren confirmed. 3 males, 2 females. Excellent sizes considering they're quintuplets. No defects, no signs of illness, no curse unless you count the curse of having inherited their father's stubborn streak. Orion made a sound that was half laugh, half sob, reaching out to touch each tiny head with trembling fingers. "They're real," he said, like he couldn't quite believe it despite witnessing their births. "They're actually here. They're actually here. They're healthy. And you're about to make a council eat their own words," Ren said with deep satisfaction. "Now let me check Lysandra before she passes out from exhaustion, and I have to revive her with my terrible bedside manner." The examination revealed that Lysandra was exhausted, sore, and would need significant recovery time, but otherwise healthy. The births had gone as well as could be expected for quintuplets, with no major complications despite the 5th pup's dramatic arrival. "You did it," Orion said quietly, his hand finding Lysandra's as she lay back against the pillows, the 5 pups nestled securely in their warming blankets nearby. "You survived Exile, delivered 5 healthy pups, and proved everyone wrong." "We did it," Lysandra corrected tiredly. "You stayed. You rebuilt a palace while I grew our family. We did this together." Outside, Marcus was apparently providing updates to the gathered crowd, because a cheer went up loud enough to make the pups startle and complain. "Thornhaven is celebrating," Ren observed dryly. "Also, Marcus just won the betting pool. First pup was female like he predicted, the ringleader establishing dominance from birth." "There was really a betting pool," Lysandra said, too tired to be properly appalled. "There's always a betting pool," Ren said. "Now rest. Those 5 perfect, definitely not cursed pups are going to need feeding soon. And you need your strength for when we travel back to the Moonstone Pack and make that council face their spectacular mistake." Lysandra looked at her 5 pups. Her impossible, miraculous, completely healthy pups who'd been condemned before birth and had just proven their existence was worth celebrating, not condemning. "How long until we can travel?" she asked. 3 weeks minimum, Ren said. "Maybe 4. Gives you time to recover and the pups time to gain strength. Then we march back to that pack of yours and watch Elder Cassia's face when you present 5 thriving heirs." "I can't wait to see that," Lysandra admitted. "Neither can I," Orion said with dark satisfaction. "Neither can I." 3 weeks after the birth, Lysandra stood outside Ren's cottage watching her 5 pups sleep in a specially constructed basket, and felt her heart do something complicated that was equal parts love, terror, and fierce protective pride. They'd grown already, still tiny, still fragile, but undeniably stronger than those first trembling moments after birth. The eldest female, who Marcus had nicknamed General for her tendency to organize her siblings even at 3 weeks old, was already showing signs of a dominant personality. The calm second female, Peace, according to Petra's naming suggestion, rarely cried and seemed content just existing. The vocal third pup, A male they'd started calling Thunder for obvious reasons, had opinions about everything and expressed them loudly. The fourth male, Whisper, was quiet and thoughtful, watching everything with solemn dark eyes. And the fifth, the one who'd scared them all by arriving silent, had been named Miracle by unanimous settlement vote. "They're perfect," Orion said for approximately the 100th time since the births, crouching beside the basket with an expression of such profound love that Lysandra felt tears prick her eyes. Again, motherhood had made her emotions even more volatile than pregnancy had. "They're going to be a handful once they start walking," Wren predicted, checking each pup with practiced efficiency. 5 healthy wolf pups with strong bloodlines and apparently no sense of self-preservation based on how General tried to climb out of the basket yesterday. "She's 3 weeks old. That should not be possible yet." "She's advanced," Orion said proudly. "She's going to give you heart attacks," Wren corrected. "But yes, advanced. All 5 are developing beautifully. Which means," she fixed Lysandra with a serious look, "you're cleared for travel whenever you feel ready. Your body's healed well, the pups are strong enough for the journey, and I suspect you're eager to go home and make certain council members regret their life choices." "Is it that obvious?" Lysandra asked. "You've been staring northeast toward Moonstone Pack territory every evening for the past week," Wren said dryly. "So yes, extremely obvious." That evening, Orion received a message via Marin's messenger bird system. A note from Elder Corinth with 3 words that made his entire face transform. "Wing is finished. The Queen's wing is complete," he said, handing Lysandra the message with barely contained excitement. Corinth included a sketch. The sketch was rough but showed enough detail to make Lysandra's breath catch. The new Queen's wing was magnificent. 3 stories of elegant architecture with large windows, multiple balconies, and what appeared to be a private garden courtyard. It was easily twice the size of the original structure, and even in sketch form, it radiated intention and purpose. "That's for me?" Lysandra whispered. "That's for you," Orion confirmed. "Every stone placed to declare your worth. Every window designed to bring light into rooms where our pups will grow. Every detail chosen to ensure that anyone who visits the Moonstone Pack understands exactly how much their queen matters." "Elder Cassia must be furious," Lysandra said, tracing the sketch's lines with trembling fingers. Elder Corinth's note mentioned that Cassia has been vocally displeased with the resource allocation, Orion said with deep satisfaction, which is diplomatic language for having a prolonged tantrum about how the Alpha King is spending pack wealth on his exiled mate. "I'm not exiled anymore," Lysandra said quietly. "I completed the terms. I survived. The pups are healthy, and now the council has to honor their promise." "Now the council has to honor their promise," Orion agreed. "And I'm going to enjoy every second of watching them do it." They decided to leave in 2 days, giving Lysandra time to prepare, and the settlement time to organize what had somehow become a farewell celebration, involving entirely too much food and a surprisingly emotional goodbye from people who'd known her less than 3 months. "You take care of those pups," Marcus said gruffly, shaking Orion's hand with the respect of one warrior to another. "And you make that council regret underestimating your mate." "I intend to," Orion promised. Petra hugged Lysandra carefully, mindful of her still recovering body. "Come back and visit when those 5 are old enough to travel for pleasure instead of justice. We'll teach them important life skills like how to win vegetable competitions and name chickens." "I'm not sure those qualify as life skills," Lysandra said, laughing through tears. "They qualify as Thornhaven life skills," Petra corrected, "which are better anyway." Wren's goodbye was characteristically practical. "You're going to be fine. The pups are healthy, you're strong, and your mate would fight the moon itself to protect you. But if you need anything, medical advice, someone to tell that council exactly how stupid they are, a place to hide if you decide pack life is overrated, you know where to find me." "Thank you," Lysandra said, hugging the healer who'd saved her life and delivered 5 impossible pups. "For everything. For believing in me when my own pack didn't." "I didn't believe in you," Wren corrected. "I believed in medical facts and genetic probability. But you exceeded those expectations anyway, which is worth more. Now go home and prove you were worth every moment of effort." The morning they left, half of Thornhaven gathered to see them off. Lysandra carried 2 pups in a specially designed sling across her chest, while Orion carried the other 3. They'd distributed their 5 heirs for balanced weight and maximum security, and the pups seemed remarkably content with the arrangement, making soft sounds of sleepy complaint, but nothing indicating true distress. "Ready?" Orion asked, and the question held weight beyond just physical preparation. "Ready," Lysandra confirmed, looking back at Thornhaven one last time, at the chaotic settlement that had given her sanctuary when her own pack had cast her out. "Let's go home. Let's show them what we've built." The journey took 3 days of careful travel, stopping frequently to feed the pups and rest. Orion's guards, the same 3 who'd accompanied him to Thornhaven, formed a protective perimeter that made Lysandra feel simultaneously safe and slightly ridiculous. Like 5 newborn pups required military-level security. "They're the future heirs to the Moonstone Pack," Orion pointed out when she mentioned this. "They require exactly this level of protection. Possibly more." On the 3rd evening, they camped at the border of Pack territory, close enough that Lysandra could smell familiar scents on the wind, pine and stone, and the particular combination of wolf scents that meant home. Home that had exiled her. Home that had called her pups cursed. Home that was about to learn exactly how wrong it had been. "Tomorrow," Orion said quietly, the pups sleeping between them in their traveling basket. "Tomorrow we finish this." "Tomorrow we finish this," Lysandra agreed, and felt something settle in her chest. Determination mixed with vindication mixed with the fierce, protective love of a mother who'd survived everything to keep her pups safe. The 5 sleeping bundles stirred slightly, Miracle making a small sound that might have been agreement or might have been indigestion. Either way, it made both parents smile. "They have no idea what's waiting for them," Lysandra murmured. "A castle rebuilt in their honor," Orion said. "A pack that will learn to celebrate them. A future where they're valued, not condemned. And a mother who walked through fire to give them that future," Lysandra added. "And a father who would do the same," Orion said, pulling her close as much as the basket of pups between them allowed. "Tomorrow, love. Tomorrow we claim what's ours." The Moonstone Pack Castle looked exactly as Lysandra remembered. Imposing stone walls, familiar towers, the organized chaos of a working pack center, with one spectacular exception that made her stop walking and just stare. The Queen's Wing rose against the morning sky like a declaration of intent, its new architecture so dramatically different from the rest of the castle that it seemed to announce itself. 3 stories of pale stone and large windows, balconies that overlooked the gardens, and architectural details that spoke of careful planning and significant expense. "It's real," Lysandra whispered. "It's real," Orion confirmed, and his voice held satisfaction so deep it was almost tangible. "Every stone placed while thinking of you. Every decision made to honor what you survived." They'd sent word ahead that the Alpha King was returning with his queen, which meant half the pack had gathered in the main courtyard. Nobles, servants, guards, and curious wolves who wanted to witness whatever was about to happen. And standing at the front of the crowd, wearing carefully neutral expressions that fooled absolutely no one, were the 5 members of the council. Elder Cassia's face went through several interesting transformations when she saw Lysandra. Shock, disbelief, calculation, and finally resignation as her eyes dropped to the slings carrying 5 small bundles. "Your Majesty," Elder Cassia said, bowing to Orion with the bare minimum of respect protocol required. Her eyes flickered to Lysandra. "And Luna Lysandra, we were not informed you would be accompanying the king. Were you expecting me to be dead?" Lysandra asked pleasantly, and the question landed like a blade wrapped in silk. "How unfortunate for you that I survived." Murmurs rippled through the gathered crowd. This was not how exiled queens typically spoke to council elders, but then, exiled queens didn't typically return with 5 healthy pups and a mate who'd literally rebuilt a palace in their honor. The council made certain assumptions, Elder Corinth said carefully, stepping forward. Unlike Cassia, She looked genuinely relieved to see Lysandra alive. Assumptions that appear to have been incorrect. The council called my heirs cursed and exiled my pregnant mate based on superstition instead of evidence, Orion said, his voice carrying absolute authority across the courtyard. Those assumptions weren't incorrect. They were catastrophically wrong. He moved to stand beside Lysandra, and together they began carefully removing the pups from their slings. 5 tiny wolf pups, eyes still closed, making small sounds of complaint about being disturbed. Orion held 3 while Lysandra cradled 2, and the sight of 5 healthy newborns silenced even the whispers. 5 pups, Lysandra said clearly, ensuring everyone could hear. All healthy, all strong. Born 3 weeks ago with the help of a healer who actually understood genetics instead of clinging to outdated superstition. No curse, no plague, no madness. Just 5 perfect heirs to the Moonstone Pack who were condemned before they even took their first breath. She walked forward, each step measured and deliberate, until she stood directly in front of the council table. One by one, she placed 2 pups carefully on the ancient wood, the same table where she'd been judged and condemned. Orion added the other 3, arranging them gently so the council had no choice but to look at what they'd tried to destroy. You promised, Lysandra said. And now her voice shook not with fear, but with righteous fury. Elder Corinth witnessed it, bound it with magic. If I returned with 5 healthy pups, you would acknowledge your mistake and recognize them as legitimate heirs. The oath is still bound, Elder Corinth confirmed, raising her hand to show the faint blue glow of binding magic still active around her fingers. The terms were met. The council must honor its promise. For a long moment, nobody moved. Then Elder Cassia's shoulders dropped in defeat, so visible it was almost satisfying. The council acknowledges, she said through gritted teeth, that our assessment was incorrect. The quintuplets are healthy and show no signs of curse or corruption. They are recognized as legitimate heirs to the Moonstone Pack, born of Alpha King Orion Valthorn and Luna Lysandra. Louder, Orion said coldly. So everyone in this courtyard can hear you admit you were wrong. Elder Cassia's jaw clenched, but she raised her voice. The council was wrong. Luna Lysandra's pups are healthy and legitimate. Her exile is officially ended, and her position as queen is reinstated. The courtyard erupted in sound. Cheers from some, shocked whispers from others, and what sounded like someone actually applauding the drama of it all. Lysandra carefully gathered her pups back into her arms, feeling the weight of vindication settle over her shoulders like a cloak. Thank you for honoring your promise, she said with pointed politeness. Now, if you'll excuse us, my family and I are going to retire to the Queen's Wing, the one my mate rebuilt to demonstrate exactly how much he values us. I assume it's ready for occupation. It's been ready for a week, Elder Corinth said, and there might have been the hint of a smile at the corner of her mouth. Fully furnished, supplied, and prepared for the Queen and her heirs. Orion offered Lysandra his arm, and together they walked through the parting crowd toward the magnificent new wing that declared their worth to anyone who looked at it. Behind them, the council sat in uncomfortable silence, facing the consequences of their spectacular misjudgment. How do you feel? Orion asked quietly as they climbed the new stone steps toward their rebuilt home. Victorious, Lysandra admitted, exhausted, vindicated, and really, really eager to see what you built. What he'd built was spectacular. Rooms filled with light, nurseries designed specifically for 5 growing pups, a private garden courtyard, and a master suite that looked out over the entire pack territory. This is ours, Orion said, watching Lysandra take in every detail. Built for you, for them, for the family we created despite everyone who said it was impossible. Lysandra set the basket of pups carefully on the floor and turned to her mate, tears finally falling freely. You rebuilt a palace, she said. While I was in exile, you were here building something that would welcome us home. I was building proof, Orion corrected, pulling her into his arms carefully. Proof that you matter more than anything, that our family is worth every resource I command, that no one, not the council, not tradition, not centuries of superstition, gets to determine our worth. The 5 pups stirred in their basket, making small sounds that suggested feeding time was approaching. Miracle hiccuped. Thunder complained loudly about something only he understood. General made a sound that was somehow already bossy, despite being 3 weeks old. Our impossible family, Lysandra whispered. Our perfect family, Orion corrected. Built on survival and love and the stubborn refusal to let anyone else write our story. Below, the Moonstone Pack was adjusting to the reality of 5 new heirs and a queen who'd returned from exile victorious. The council was facing consequences, and the magnificent Queen's Wing stood as permanent testimony to what happened when you underestimated Lysandra. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, 5 pups to raise, a pack to lead, a future to build. But tonight, in the palace rebuilt to honor her, surrounded by the family she'd fought so hard to protect, Lysandra felt something she hadn't experienced in months. She felt home. 2 years later, Lysandra stood in the Queen's garden courtyard, watching 5 young wolf pups attempt to coordinate an attack on their father, and tried very hard not to laugh at the spectacular failure of their tactical planning. General, now 2 years old and living up to her nickname with alarming accuracy, was clearly trying to organize her siblings into some kind of formation. Thunder was ignoring her completely, in favor of his own frontal assault strategy. Peace was sitting off to the side looking serene and uninvolved, which meant she was probably planning something subtle. Whisper was doing exactly what his name suggested, moving silently around the perimeter like he'd been studying stealth tactics. And Miracle, the smallest but arguably most determined, was attempting to climb a decorative statue to gain height advantage. Orion, for his part, was pretending not to notice 5 pups preparing to pounce while he examined a rosebush with exaggerated interest. Your tactical formation is flawed, he called out without turning around. Thunder, frontal assaults only work if you have the element of surprise, which you lost when you growled. General, you can't organize a coordinated attack when half your team isn't listening. Miracle, statues are not strategic high ground. They're just statues you're going to fall off of. I won't fall, Miracle protested, wobbling precariously. You will absolutely fall, Orion said. The question is whether you learn from falling or just try climbing higher next time. All 5 pups launched their attack simultaneously, which resulted in a chaotic pile of small wolves, laughing Alpha King, and no clear victor. Lysandra watched her family tumble across the grass with such profound love that it still sometimes took her breath away. Even 2 years later, even after countless moments like this, they're going to give you gray hair before you're 40, Ren's voice said from the doorway, and Lysandra turned to find the healer watching the chaos with her characteristic dry amusement. She'd traveled from Thornhaven for her quarterly visit, ostensibly to check on the Quintuplets' development, but really because she'd become attached to the family she'd helped bring into the world. They're going to give me gray hair, Lysandra corrected. Yesterday, General convinced her siblings they should explore the castle dungeons. We found them 3 hours later having organized the old weapons into categories and started an inventory system. She's 2, Ren said flatly. I'm aware, Lysandra said. She's also apparently a natural administrator with strong opinions about proper equipment storage. Thunder decided the echo in the dungeons was perfect for voice training and spent an hour howling. Peace found a book about ancient pack treaties and was reading it when we located them. Whisper had somehow picked the lock on 3 different storage rooms, and Miracle was attempting to negotiate with the dungeon spiders about relocation to less valuable real estate. Your children are either going to rule the world or burn it down, Ren observed, possibly both simultaneously. From across the garden, General had apparently decided the attack strategy needed revision and was now holding what looked like a tactical briefing with her siblings. Thunder was nodding enthusiastically. Peace was offering quiet suggestions. Whisper was already repositioning. And Miracle had successfully climbed the statue and was looking extremely proud of himself despite being stuck. Help! Miracle called out, suddenly realizing his achievement had consequences. Orion plucked his smallest son off the statue with practiced ease, setting him gently on the ground. What did we learn? That I can climb statues? Miracle said hopefully. That climbing up is easier than climbing down, Orion corrected. And that asking for help isn't weakness, it's wisdom. Lysandra felt her heart do that complicated thing again. The overwhelming surge of love mixed with pride, mixed with the constant low-grade terror of being responsible for 5 brilliant, chaotic wolf pups who had absolutely no sense of their own mortality. The council wants to schedule a formal presentation ceremony next month, Lysandra said to Wren as Orion rejoined the puppy chaos, officially introducing the 5 heirs to visiting alphas and allied packs. Elder Corinth thinks it's time the territories see them, understand what they represent. And what do they represent? Wren asked, though her tone suggested she already knew the answer. Change, Lysandra said simply. Proof that old superstitions were wrong. Evidence that multiple heirs aren't a curse, but a blessing. 5 healthy, intelligent, strong pups who are growing up celebrated instead of condemned. The impact of the quintuplets' survival had rippled far beyond the Moonstone Pack. In the 2 years since their birth, Lysandra had received letters from she-wolves in other territories, some pregnant with twins or triplets. Terrified they'd face the same exile she had, she'd written back to every single one, offering advice, encouragement, and the contact information for healers like Wren and Marin, who understood genetics instead of fear. 3 other packs had revised their laws about multiple births. 2 had formally apologized to families they'd exiled decades ago, inviting them to return. And the cultural shift was spreading, slowly but undeniably. What had been considered cursed was being re-evaluated as rare and valuable. Elder Cassia's resignation was the best thing that happened to this pack, Wren said, watching the pups attempt a new coordinated attack that was going slightly better than the first attempt. That woman was stuck 2 centuries in the past and dragging everyone with her. Elder Cassia had resigned 6 months after Lysandra's return, unable to face the daily reminder that she'd been spectacularly wrong. She'd left the territory entirely, moving to some distant pack where presumably no one knew about her role in exiling a pregnant queen for carrying too many healthy heirs. Elder Marcus had followed shortly after, citing age and desire for retirement, though everyone knew it was shame driving him away. 2 other council members had stepped down voluntarily, recognizing they'd supported a terrible decision and couldn't continue in positions of authority. The new council was younger, more open to questioning tradition, and significantly more likely to consult with healers before making judgments about medical matters. Elder Corinth had been appointed head elder unanimously, a position she'd accepted with the condition that all future council decisions be subject to review and revision if evidence proved them wrong. The pack has changed, Lysandra said, watching pack members walk past the garden gates, many stopping to wave at the playing pups or call out greetings. When we take them into the village now, people celebrate them. Shopkeepers give them treats. The blacksmith made them each a tiny practice sword. The weaver created play cloaks embroidered with their names. They're loved, Wren. Genuinely loved. As they should be, Wren said firmly. 5 miracles who survived exile before birth and came into the world proving everyone wrong. Of course they're loved. But it had taken time to build that love, Lysandra remembered. Those first months after returning had been tense, pack members uncertain how to treat a queen who'd been exiled and returned victorious. Pups who represented both the council's failure and the pack's future. Some had been hostile. Others had been cautiously supportive. Many had simply been confused. Orion had addressed it directly in a pack-wide gathering, standing before hundreds of wolves with Lysandra beside him and 5 tiny pups in a basket at their feet. "These are your future," he'd said, his voice carrying absolute authority. 5 heirs who will inherit a pack that learned to question its prejudices and change its mind when evidence proved old beliefs wrong. They were called cursed by wolves who let fear override wisdom. They survived because their mother is braver than anyone in this territory, and because a handful of good people refused to accept cruelty disguised as tradition. If you cannot celebrate these pups, if you cannot see them as the blessings they are, then you have learned nothing from our mistakes. The speech had been blunt, challenging, and exactly what the pack needed to hear. Slowly, acceptance had grown into genuine affection, and affection had bloomed into pride. The Moonstone pack now had 5 heirs instead of one uncertain successor. They had strength in numbers, diversity in personalities, and a future that looked nothing like their traditional past. And most wolves had come to see that as improvement rather than threat. "Mama!" General called out, successfully pinning Orion with help from all 4 siblings. "We won!" "You won through teamwork," Lysandra called back. "Much better than your first 17 attempts." "We only tried 12 times," Thunder protested. "I'm counting the attempts from yesterday," Lysandra said. "When you tried to ambush your father during breakfast and ended up wearing scrambled eggs." The pups dissolved into giggles, remembering the breakfast incident that had resulted in 5 messy wolf pups, 1 extremely patient alpha king, and 3 servants who'd laughed so hard they'd cried. "Your Majesty," a voice called from the garden entrance, and Lysandra turned to find Elder Corinth approaching with careful steps, her expression warm but formal. "I apologize for interrupting family time, but there's a matter requiring your attention." "What kind of matter?" Lysandra asked, immediately concerned. "A good one," Elder Corinth assured her. "Representatives from the Northern Highlands pack have arrived. Their Luna is pregnant with triplets, first multiple birth in their territory in 50 years, and they've come seeking advice about how to ensure the pups' safe delivery and acceptance." Lysandra's breath caught. The Northern Highlands were notoriously traditional, one of the most conservative packs in all territories. For them to seek help, to acknowledge they didn't have answers, represented a seismic shift in how multiple births were viewed. "They want to speak with you specifically," Elder Corinth continued. "The Luna heard about your survival, about how you delivered quintuplets and proved the old superstitions wrong. She wants to know how you did it, wants assurance that her 3 pups can survive and thrive." "Of course I'll speak with her," Lysandra said immediately. "When?" "They're waiting in the formal receiving room," Elder Corinth said. "Whenever you're ready." Lysandra looked at Orion, who'd extracted himself from the puppy pile, and was heading toward her with understanding already clear in his eyes. "Go," he said simply. "Help them. Show them what's possible. I'll manage our Chaos Squad." "Our Chaos Squad just managed to pin the Alpha King," Lysandra pointed out. "Can you handle them alone?" "I am a powerful alpha wolf who has faced down territorial challenges and pack disputes," Orion said with exaggerated dignity. "I can certainly handle 5 2-year-olds for an hour." From behind him, all 5 pups were clearly plotting something new, and Whisper was making a gesture that looked suspiciously like attack signal. "You're about to be ambushed again," Lysandra warned. "I know," Orion said. "Go help that Luna. We'll be fine." Lysandra kissed him quickly, hugged each pup despite their protests about interrupting tactical planning, and followed Elder Corinth toward the castle. Behind her, she heard Orion yelp in surprise as 5 pups launched their next assault, followed by laughter and what sounded like thunder declaring victory prematurely. The Northern Highlands representatives were a study in contrasts. The Alpha tall and imposing, but clearly worried. The Luna pregnant and frightened, but trying to appear strong. And 2 advisors who looked like they weren't sure if seeking help was wisdom or weakness. "Luna Lysandra," the Northern Highlands Luna said, rising from her chair with difficulty. "Thank you for seeing us. I'm Luna Marianne. This is my mate, Alpha Roderick." "Please sit," Lysandra said immediately, recognizing the exhaustion in another pregnant she-wolf's face. "You've traveled far. How can I help?" What followed was a conversation Lysandra had never expected to have, sharing her story of exile, survival, and vindication with wolves from a pack known for rigid traditionalism. She told them about the Council's judgment, about Thornhaven and Wren, about the terror of delivering 5 pups and the joy of proving everyone wrong. Luna Marianne cried openly when Lysandra described negotiating the binding promise with her council, extracting justice even while facing exile. "I thought we were alone," Marianne whispered. "I thought carrying 3 pups meant something was wrong with me, that I'd failed somehow. The healers said triplets were unnatural, that we should expect complications. that the pups might not survive birth. Your healers are wrong, Lysandra said firmly. Multiple births are rare but not unnatural. They require skilled care and proper support, but they're not a curse or a sign of weakness. They're just genetics expressing themselves in unexpected ways. She spent 2 hours with the Northern Highlands representatives, answering questions, sharing resources, and eventually sending them back with detailed instructions for prenatal care, a letter of introduction to Wren, and an open invitation to return if they needed further support. You're changing the world, Elder Corinth said quietly after the representatives departed. One pack at a time, one scared mother at a time. You're rewriting centuries of superstition. I'm just telling the truth, Lysandra said. That multiple births aren't cursed. That mothers carrying more than one pup aren't broken. That our heirs deserve celebration, not condemnation. That's revolutionary truth in territories that spent centuries believing otherwise, Elder Corinth corrected. Don't diminish what you've accomplished, Luna. You survived exile while pregnant with quintuplets. You delivered 5 healthy pups against all odds. You returned and forced a council to acknowledge their mistake. And now you're using that victory to help other mothers facing similar fear. That's extraordinary. Lysandra returned to the garden as evening approached, finding Orion lying on the grass completely covered in sleeping pups who'd apparently exhausted themselves through sustained tactical practice. All 5 were draped across him in various positions, General on his chest, Thunder across his legs, Peace tucked against his side, Whisper sprawled over his arm, and Miracle curled up on his shoulder. They defeated me completely, Orion whispered when he saw her, careful not to wake the sleeping pile. Overwhelming force and superior numbers. I never stood a chance. Lysandra settled beside him, running gentle fingers through Peace's fur. The Northern Highlands Luna is carrying triplets. They came seeking advice about how to ensure the pups survive and are accepted by their pack. What did you tell them? I told them the truth, Lysandra said. That their pups can survive with proper care. That multiple births aren't cursed. That they should fight for their family the same way we fought for ours. Orion's free hand found hers, squeezing gently. You're helping others the way Wren helped you. I'm paying forward what was given to me, Lysandra corrected. Knowledge, hope, proof that survival is possible. Every mother who doesn't have to face exile is a victory. Every pup who grows up celebrated instead of condemned is progress. They lay there as twilight painted the sky in shades of purple and gold, covered in sleeping pups, who had no idea they were part of something larger than themselves. 5 heirs who'd been born into a world that called them cursed, and were growing up in a world learning to see them as miracles instead. The Queen's Wing is holding its first formal gathering next week, Orion said quietly. Visiting alphas, allied pack leaders, all coming to meet our 5 heirs officially. Elder Corinth thinks it's time to make a statement about the future of the Moonstone Pack. A statement that we're changing, Lysandra said. A statement that we've changed, Orion corrected. From a pack that exiled a pregnant queen to one that rebuilt a palace in her honor. From wolves who feared multiple births to a territory that celebrates them. From rigid tradition to adaptive wisdom. Miracle stirred on Orion's shoulder, making a small sound in his sleep. Thunder's paws twitched like he was dreaming of running. General's breathing was deep and even, already authoritative even in sleep. Peace and Whisper were completely still, peaceful even in puppy dreams. They're going to lead this pack someday, Lysandra said softly. 5 heirs sharing power, bringing different strengths, governing together instead of fighting for dominance. They're going to revolutionize how packs function, Orion agreed. Showing that shared leadership can be stronger than single authority, that diversity of thought improves decision-making, that the old ways aren't always the best ways. As stars began appearing overhead, servants approached quietly to light the garden lanterns, careful not to disturb the sleeping royal family. Pack members walked past the gates, many stopping to watch the scene, their Alpha King and Luna covered in sleeping pups, creating a tableau of family and peace and the future they were all building together. This was what Lysandra had survived exile to protect. What she'd walked through fire to preserve. Not just 5 individual pups, but everything they represented. change, hope. Proof that love was stronger than superstition and courage could reshape entire cultures. Worth it? Orion whispered, the question he'd asked 100 times over the past 2 years. Worth everything, Lysandra confirmed, the answer that had never changed. Every moment of fear, every impossible challenge, every sacrifice. Worth all of it for this, for them, for us, for the future we built together. The 5 pups slept on, safe and celebrated and completely unaware they were miracles. But someday they'd understand. Someday they'd learn about the exile, the survival, the palace rebuilt in their honor. Someday they'd realize they were living proof that one mother's courage and one father's devotion could change the world. But tonight, they were just 5 sleeping pups, dreaming puppy dreams, surrounded by parents who'd crossed worlds to keep them safe, and a pack learning that sometimes the greatest blessings came wrapped in unexpected numbers. The stars wheeled overhead. The queen's wing stood magnificent against the night sky, and in a garden courtyard built for family, love proved once again that it was worth any cost. Epilogue 5 years later. General stood before the gathered council, now 7 years old and every inch her mother's daughter, presenting a detailed proposal for updated pack safety protocols with the confidence of someone who'd never doubted their right to be heard. Lysandra watched from her seat beside Orion, trying not to smile too obviously at her eldest daughter's imperious tone, while explaining why current defensive strategies needed modernization. Beside General, her 4 siblings waited their turn to contribute. Thunder with his analysis of communication systems, Peace with her diplomatic suggestions, Whisper with intelligence reports he'd somehow gathered despite being 7, and Miracle with innovative ideas about resource management that had impressed even Elder Corinth. 5 heirs working together, presenting a unified vision, showing the Moonstone Pack exactly what their future looked like. They're terrifying, Orion murmured. They're perfect, Lysandra corrected, watching her impossible miracles change the world one presentation at a time. Outside, the Queen's wing stood against blue sky, permanent testimony to what one family's courage had built. In territories across the realm, multiple births were celebrated instead of condemned, and in the Moonstone Pack, 5 heirs were growing up knowing they were worth rebuilding palaces for, worth every sacrifice, worth crossing worlds, worth everything. The story that began with Exile had become legend, and the Quintuplets who'd been called cursed were writing their own history now, one that proved love, courage, and stubborn determination could reshape reality itself. Thunder made a joke. Peace laughed. Whisper smiled quietly. Miracle added an unexpected point, and the general organized them all with natural authority. Lysandra reached for Orion's hand, squeezed gently, and watched their impossible family command the respect of an entire pack. The future was theirs, and it was magnificent. The end. My beautiful souls, Lysandra's journey taught us that maternal love can reshape entire worlds. 5 pups called cursed became 5 miracles that changed everything. If you watched until the very end, comment. 5 miracles are worth rebuilding palaces for. Let me see who stayed for the whole story. Which moment broke your heart? The exile? The birth? The triumphant return? Tell me in the comments. Subscribe and hit that notification bell. We post supernatural romance stories every day. See you tomorrow, warriors. With love, Maggie Reed.